Hello viewers, good afternoon everyone. I hope everyone is doing well and keeping safe. Now the first topic of discussion which we have today is due diligence exercise. Now it's very important to understand that due diligence is mostly the first step involved in an M&A transaction. Now before we begin any further, it's important to analyze and understand that what exactly is a due diligence. Due diligence, to put it in very simple words, is nothing but investigation into affairs of a company, its assets, etc., to understand the feasibility of making an investment. Basically, we all know about this concept of caveat emptor, which means that when we are buying, as a buyer, we need to be aware of the risk associated with any commodity which we are purchasing. So similarly, if you are entering into any M&A transaction, be it a purchase of shares or be it a business transfer, you have to analyze the risks associated with that business. You need to understand whether buying that business would be profitable or not, or what are the key value depleters when it comes to the concerned asset you are purchasing or the concerned company in which you are going to make an investment. So that is where the role of due diligence comes into picture. Before going into any technicalities any further and avoiding the use of any legal jargons or technical jargons, I'll give you a very simple example to explain this concept of due diligence, so that even someone who's in law school or someone who's just about to graduate can understand at least the meaning of this concept of due diligence. Suppose you want to purchase a car, let's say a second hand car, and you approach the concerned seller. Okay, obviously you would want to see the car yourself. You would want to see the documents pertaining to its title. You would want to see the concerned car, whether it's in good position or not, whether the engine is in a good state, whether it has any dents. Okay, so you would at least analyze all aspects before ensuring whether or not you want to buy that commodity. Correct? And if at all, if you come across something critical, let's say you do feel that there is something wrong with the car, but at the same time there could be two situations. You feel that the car is in such a shape that it cannot be purchased at all. It would be a complete loss if you go ahead and purchase. At the same time, the other scenario could be that you do feel that you will have to spend some amount of money. It could be a considerable amount of money also in getting the car repaired. But at the same time, you feel that you can negotiate with the concerned seller, and you can get its value or basically the purchase price reduced by pointing out certain flaws in the concerned commodity, which is car in the instant case. So you can strictly compare this example with a due diligence exercise. A due diligence also aims to help the purchaser or the investor in evaluating all the potential risks associated with that concerned transaction, be it a business transfer or be it investment or a purchase of shares. So from that perspective, the role of due diligence is very, very important. A due diligence exercise is not always initiated at the behest of the concerned investor. Okay, so there could be a situation wherein the seller entity itself is initiating a due diligence exercise. So in that case, we call it a vendor due diligence. Now, a due diligence exercise, like someone may ask that why would the concerned target company want to highlight its own flaws. Now you'll have to understand that it's not about highlighting your flaws. A due diligence exercise is also important because by virtue of conducting the due diligence exercise yourself on your company, on the target company, basically I'm talking about the vendor due diligence report, you are sort of being transparent. You are not just highlighting your flaws, you are also highlighting your capabilities, and you are giving a very clear picture, a clear message to the concerned investor or the concerned party which will be investing or entering into any sort of transaction, that look, I have these flaws, these are my strengths, these are my weaknesses, and I'm ready to take all the steps necessary to ensure that this transaction sails through. If there are certain non-compliances pertaining to my assets, pertaining to my companies, I would rectify them on my own. So a vendor, and also why a vendor due diligence becomes important is because there could be a situation wherein before the concerned investor, the concerned purchaser conducts his own due diligence, he would want to at least have a vendor due diligence report in his hand. And at the same time, there could be a situation wherein there are multiple purchasers approaching the concerned entity. So the entity obviously would want to have a vendor due diligence report prepared by a law firm, by a lawyer, and before even handing over that report to the concerned parties, which would be the purchasers or the investors, it would want to at least do a simple cleanup of the company. Let's say there are 20 non-compliances and 10 of them can be sorted. Those non-compliances can be rectified within a short span of, let's say, 1 month. So the company would do it. So at least when the final report goes to, let's say, the concerned investor, or if the investor on his own conducts a due diligence of the concerned target company, the number of non-compliances would go down. Obviously, there could be some non-compliances which cannot be just rectified within a month, but at least the number of non-compliances would go down, and the concerned investor would get a better picture of the company. And this would avoid a situation wherein even the promoters of the target company get a shock. Once the due diligence is done by the other side, basically the investor, like even the promoters of the company may totally be unaware of the concerned non-compliances. So at least the vendor due diligence exercise at times avoids that. Now, one thing which I've learned these years while working with law firms is that while you're doing a due diligence exercise, never do it in a very mechanical way. And by mechanical way, I mean that never place reliance on some old DD report, even if it's a month old. It's okay to place reliance to a limited extent. Like for example, if you're new to this exercise and you haven't done it so many times, it's okay to seek guidance, but copy pasting could be disastrous. Now, it's difficult to understand this way. I'll give a very simple example. Let's say you're working on a due diligence exercise and you come across a non-compliance. The concerned non-compliances is the concerned target company is not maintaining one specific statutory register, and you also have a month old due diligence report prepared by your own team, and which exactly has the same non-compliance, the same concerned non-compliance with respect to that same register. So you have the section at hand, the penalty provision, and even the recommendation. So you may be tempted to just copy paste the concerned issue here, and at max you may just verify the section just to be sure that there is no amendment to the concerned section and the penalty provision. But please be extra cautious while doing that. The reason being that sometimes you forget that the transaction structure at hand could be different. Like when you are trying to take a shortcut, please be extra cautious, because for example, again I'm giving a very simple example. Let's say the report from which you copy pasted, there the stake which was being acquired was 30%, or the investor was making an investment and on closing he would have acquired or he would have got a 30% stake in the company, and you are representing the investor. You represented the investor in that or your concerned law firm or your team represented the investor in that old transaction. So it was a 30% stake investment. Okay, and for the non-compliance of that statutory register, maintaining the statutory register, the recommendation which was given was adequate reps and reps warranties backed by suitable indemnities should be taken from the company and sellers. Now just remember, company and sellers. Now that was a month old transaction. It's done and dusted. You have the report. Now you are working on a transaction, the same non-compliance is there, and you are tempted to copy paste, and you copy paste it. But at the same time, you'll have to understand the recommendation here would change. It won't remain the same what it was. If the stake at hand is different. Let's say in this transaction, you're representing the investor which is acquiring 100% stake in the company. Now compare the recommendation stated there, that adequate reps and warranties backed by suitable indemnities should be acquired from the company and the sellers. Now you cannot just write that in a 100% acquisition, if you are representing the investor, you cannot write that in case of non-compliance, the recommendation which you are given cannot be that adequate reps and warranties backed by suitable indemnities should be taken from the company and sellers. Like sellers would be there, but company cannot be there, because please think through that post closing you are representing the investor who would be having 100% stake in the company, correct? So why would the company give a rep for non-compliance? Because in effect you are in charge of the company, your investor would be in charge of the company. So these are small issues which you have to think through before copy pasting, and ideally you should avoid that. Related issue here would be that before you begin this due diligence exercise, it's always very important to understand the transaction structure. Like I did give a very simple example as in how the recommendation may change when you're doing a due diligence for an entity wherein 30% share acquisition is proposed, as opposed to a due diligence of an entity wherein 100% share acquisition is done. So bearing this in mind, it's very, very important to always understand or get a very clear picture of the transaction at hand, so as to ensure that you don't miss out on any essential points when you're doing a due diligence, and at the same time you don't point something which is not even needed and give a recommendation which is not even needed. Like for example, it's a minority investment. Okay, you cannot let's say there's a specific provision in a material like when you are doing a material contracts chapter, we'll be dealing with the various chapters involved in a due diligence report in the next part of our series. But let's say you are diligencing the documents, the material contract documents, and if you come across a document which says that in case of a change in control, or if it says that in case of a sale of a majority stake, a prior approval would be needed. So if you know beforehand the clear transaction structure, if you know that it's a minority investment, then you wouldn't highlight this as an issue, as opposed to if you're doing it in a very mechanical way, and if you have read in the old report that any change in control restriction is highlighted in a due diligence report. So that you should avoid doing. Now I'm sure that we all have got a basic idea as to what exactly is a due diligence, why is it done, and what are the various kinds of due diligence done. But now it's very important to even understand that how should a document be diligenced, and at the same time what are the key chapters in a due diligence report, and what type of documentation can someone expect while working on a due diligence exercise. Now this is an elaborate discussion which will take more time. So please stay tuned. We will be meeting again next week to discuss about the various chapters involved in a due diligence report and the various documentation or the various types of documents which one will have to review in the various chapters while doing a due diligence exercise. Thank you.